not read the comments?
Hello, you're listening to 101 Part-Time Jobs, where I speak to bands and artists about different kinds of jobs they've worked, between tours, between making records, in order to survive, in order to keep their shit going. On today's episode, Murkage Dave, whose new album, The City Needs a Hero, comes out this Friday. He's so candid, it's a fresh take, and it's fun, it's exciting. Cheers for listening to 101 Part-Time Jobs. This episode is supported by 2000 Trees Festival, taking place from the 6th to the 9th of July in Cheltenham, just a few hours away from London. It's going to be headlined by Idols, Jimmy Eat World, Thrice, and Turnstile. I just saw their Nardwire episode on YouTube tonight. Funny stuff. 2000 Trees is a wicked festival. They've just been announcing a band a day for the last week. And if you want to go, if you know you want to see heaps of bands across rock and metal and punk, some of my favourites on there are Mannequin Pussy, Cheerbleeders, Salem, Island of Love, who I talk about all the time on here because they're great. Are playing loads of bands. 2000treesfestival.co.uk if you want to look at the full lineup or go follow them. And if you want to get a ticket, but you haven't got your ticket yet, you can get 10% off using the voucher code 101POD, all capital letters. Save yourself 20 quid or so. 101POD as a voucher code at 2000treesfestival.co.uk. Independent festivals rule. Cheers for listening to 101 Part-Time Jobs. Here's Murkage Dave. Go well. Cheers.
Close the app, put the phone back in my jeans.
I kind of imagine it like creativity is like this kind of river, or like a cosmic channel that just like runs. Like if you looked directly above your head, it's just like flowing along. Every now and again, you're able to access it and pull something out of it, and you don't know where it's come from, but it's like, you know, you've accessed some truth or a way of communicating something that's like the way of talking about something complicated in a simple way or something like that. And I think that like that's kind of, you know, like when you think about like the great songwriters or, you know, great artists of our time, I feel like that, you know, and you can like certain eras, like so say like Stevie Wonder in the 70s was like he was in that channel every minute, you know, like he was pulling from that thing every minute. Whereas, you know, and I guess like that's, as an artist, that's where you want to kind of be able to pull from there. But I feel that's how I explain it, because it's like, yeah, you couldn't, it's not like an academic thing, is it? You don't kind of like work your way to like that happening.
Have you ever read any books by Herman Hesse?
No.
I think that's the way you pronounce it. Hesse. One's called Siddhartha, and I really, really, really recommend it. It talks about the river. Like the river is key place of it.
That reminds me a bit of like my GCSE. I guess like I had to do like a story for my coursework or something like that. I came up with the idea of like, what if like pigeons became like super intelligent? I basically came up with the idea to do like Jurassic Park, but like it's pigeons instead of dinosaurs. And then like, so I handed it in, and my English teacher was like, "This is just the birds," but I didn't know that the birds existed.
Alfred
You see what I'm saying?
Hitchcock.
Yeah, I didn't know. I'd never seen. I think I'd seen like Vertigo, but I hadn't seen any other Alfred Hitchcock at that point, which was kind of weird because he's from Leytonstone, which is where I'm from. But,
no way. I didn't know he was from Leytonstone.
Yeah, there's an Alfred Hitchcock pub.
As an artist, it's finding that time, finding that peace. This is a podcast to speak to working musicians. You know, I think a big part of my light bulb moment was thinking of my friends who make a living being artists, but it was like a very gradual thing. And if anything, they're working harder now on their art than they ever were in some cases, you know, trying to balance 3 jobs. So I figured there's a whole conversation. There's like a can to be opened here for stories of that, you know, the kind of the good, the bad, the ugly.
Definitely, man. I think like people are getting more comfortable with it. I guess like we grew up with like the kind of, you know, the MTV kind of idea of like a pop star. And obviously you still have like artists that are in that position, but I don't know, a lot of people making interesting music are just like living life. I feel like traditionally people wouldn't want to talk about this kind of stuff. So I think it's actually like sick that this podcast exists. And because I feel like, you know, people coming through they're going to be more comfortable. You just want people to be themselves ultimately, don't you? You'll see like an artist get frustrated and they'll go on like Twitter or like Instagram and they'll start talking about how hard they're working or start ranting about the industry or whatever. And it's kind of like people are just trying to live their lives. They're following you because like they like you, but there's a lot of different motivations why someone will follow you. Whereas I feel more comfortable talking about certain things on this podcast because it's like, okay, you're going to go to this podcast. I mean, the name says it. So it's like, okay, you're going to go to this podcast for that thing. Do you know what I'm saying? And someone who just wants to like listen to a song and just enjoy it doesn't have to kind of come here. And do you know what I mean? So I'm up for talking about whatever, but I guess it's like, I just don't like to assume that people give a shit. Do you know what I mean? Whereas
right.
That's
an interesting point because how much do you give away? Like, and how much have you thought about how much you're going to give away? Figuring out how much and what kind of parts your fans care about the most. You know, what's going to kind of inspire people.
Yeah, I just think certain things are for certain places. Like, I've got like a Patreon, and there's certain things I'll share on there because I know the people that have signed up to that are like going to be more engaged with certain types of information because it's like they're like deeper in than someone that maybe, you know. I feel like, you know, like you get a lot of people like complaining about like, oh, the algorithms changed, or I've got, you know, all these followers and no one's seeing the stuff I'm posting. But also it's like, it's so easy to follow someone on social media. You might have just, you know what I mean? Like, you might have got retweeted by like someone off the telly and then like a bunch of people followed you, but they're not really that invested. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, I think logically for me, that's more digestible. Than even like, you know, in this short time we've already been speaking, if I just started putting all this stuff on like my Instagram, it would just be like a madness.
It'd be a ramble.
Yeah. You know, like the other thing is like, I try not to think about social media in this way, but naturally everyone's human. So you don't want to embarrass yourself I mean, I've done a few things on social media, which have been like, one time I put my bank balance on my Instagram and it was like really bad. I did that, but it was kind of connected to a song that I had out that had a lyric about that. So it was different. So it was kind of like, it made sense. But I'll put stuff on my like Patreon. I wouldn't put like, so like I'll put like a demo where I might be singing a bit out of tune, but like, so they can hear how I developed the song. Or my last video for World I Want to Live In, there's like dancers in the video and they're doing a routine. But I'm not a dancer, but I had to learn the routine so that I could kind of lock in certain places. And
How did you find that?
Yeah, but then I put the video of me learning it on my Patreon. Like, I was like, don't show this to anyone. Like, it was like encrypted, do you know what I mean? But but it's just like, just to give them a bit of the kind of like the humanity of it, do you know what I mean? Rather than trying to disappear like hyper perfect, you know?
Did you have a bit of a journey, like learning, like finding your voice on socials?
Oh, definitely. And I still am. I think it's like, I'm not really that good at social media, but I just kind of like, I look at what the medium is, and then I look at who I am, and then I just try and connect the part of me that makes sense with the medium. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Sometimes it is a bit like just finding the shape that fits the whole, and it's not as complicated as you might think, connecting with people, I mean.
Yeah, I think you just got to be yourself. I noticed that, like, so for instance, like when like TikTok was kind of like coming through and everyone was like, you got to get on TikTok, you got to get TikTok. I saw a lot of artists jump that were like, but it wasn't like, it didn't make sense. Like jumping on TikTok and doing like dances, but they weren't like that artist. Do you know what I mean? It's like, there's nothing wrong. You can do whatever you want, but it just kind of felt like you're eroding trust with your audience because they're like, oh, I thought that this was the wave, but actually you're just going to flip flop and do whatever's going to get you the most like likes. Yeah. And I think that loses you Yeah, and rightly so. Like, do you know what I mean? It's like if you're like in a house party and you meet someone and you get the feeling that they're trying to act a certain way to you, but then you see them talking to someone else and they're like acting totally different, you're gonna like not trust that person because you're thinking, why are they like being? Do you know what I mean?
You can smell the bullshit, can't you?
Yeah, and I think subconsciously that's why we like things. You know, it's like because like if you like a piece of art, I mean, there's different reasons in it. It could be like it reflects your worldview in a certain way or your experiences, but also it's just like it's just because you trust it. It makes sense to your brain, doesn't it? And I think even though it might be something you've never seen before, but it just clicks. And I think that's always because there'll be some kind of integrity to it or some kind of cohesion. Another thing, you know, when people are saying, "Oh, the algorithm's changing," it's like, bro, like, do you think that you should be allowed to just like post a picture of your face, just like a deadpan photo of your face, and get thousands of likes on that? That's kind of ridiculous. Like, put some effort in it. Just like do something. And so I feel like, yeah, like, you know, why not?
What's like one of the most memorable times, doesn't have to be the first, I suppose, where like you really put your artistry first. You put Murkage Dave as an artist, kind of, you know, you had to in that moment put it first.
When you said Murkage Dave as an artist, that just triggered my brain to like, there was a period, and this is relatively recently, like in the last kind of like, I guess like maybe 5-6 years ago, where I was DJing, I was running parties, I had a podcast, you know, I was doing all this stuff. I was hosting DJs, you know, like hyping up the crowd and all this stuff. And so it was all kind of like related. It was all musical, but it was like, I only cared about telling a story. So it's like, okay, I was going to say I only care about songs, but actually like there's other things that I care about beyond that. But it was like really all the other stuff. It was kind of like making me sad, but also I feel like it was confusing. Like the direction that I wanted to go in was like, I just wanted to do music, and all the other stuff I was doing, I didn't get why people wouldn't just like accept me as a musician, you know. But then you have to kind of, again, it's like that thing of zooming out of yourself. People have got their own lives. They've got their own, they've got their job, they've got their relationship, they've got what they want to eat for dinner, they've got what shows they're watching. Like there's all this kind of stuff. You're taking up like 0.5% of their mental capacity.
And they might listen to 20 seconds of that track you just put out.
Exactly. So I had to understand, like, people are just going to classify you however, like they found out about you for a long time. They're just going to classify you as that thing. So if you're looking at me and if you see me, you know, I was with Mike Skinner, he's DJing, and I was on the mic, exciting the crowd, you're going to be like, oh, he's Mike Skinner's hype man. Do you know what I mean? And then that is how I land in your brain. And so what I had to realize was, there was a lot of stuff, not just that, but just like I was, you know, I used to play at I used to love it, man. I used to play at a club called Visions in Dalston. I was just playing like bangers, and it was like a job, but I did enjoy being there. But like, I remember, like, you know, just there DJing, and someone was like, "Bro, like, I love Put You on My Shoulders. Why? Like, I don't understand why you're." They couldn't like understand it, like while I was DJing. Do you know what I'm saying? And so, you know, I was just in there like playing Future or whatever, which is sick. And you know, I really miss DJing, and I'm going to get back to it. But I had to kind of make a decision to kind of like just really simplify things for people, because I knew that if to go in the direction that was going to like fulfill me, I had to like make some sacrifices. And whether that was like financially, yeah, or whatever, yeah. That was a period that kind of birthed Murkage Dave, changed my life. A lot of that record, what you're really hearing is the frustration of really like wanting to just write songs, but almost feeling like maybe it wasn't going to happen, or people just didn't really, I don't know. It was just like there was a lot going on at that time. And I feel like that kind of, I got very lucky, I think, just kind of like it's all on that record. And I think that's why it ended up connecting. So it's kind of like, it's funny, isn't it? I feel like maybe if I hadn't gone through all that stuff, I wouldn't have made that album. I'm Caribbean. My parents, immigrants, came to the country when they were, young. And there's this thing, of like, you put the suit on and you kind of like try and speak in a proper way so you can kind of like get a job or be accepted in society. And that's kind of my parents' generation, and it's the idea of like kind of like trying to stay within the lines so that you don't get any grief. And then like my generation is like not having it. Do you know what I mean? We're just like, fuck you, don't care. Like, I'll just step on the cracks. But I don't know. I was just kind of like trying to like, I don't know. It's hard to say because I didn't really think about it that much. But it's like almost like, that's why I like doing stuff like this, because I can kind of like analyze what I was saying. But it's just kind of like the futility of like trying to be like proper, or like trying to like play by the rules when still like it's not, I don't know, it's just not.
Playing by the rules doesn't work all the time.
Nah.
Sometimes it doesn't do anything for you.
Nah.
Was that the first thing I mentioned about Murkage Dave changed my life, about shit going wrong, and like kind of that theme? Was that quite true to what was happening to you?
Yeah. Well, the first song, King of First World Problems. If it can go wrong, it will go wrong. It's funny. I never thought about it at the time. Yeah, but like thinking about it, that song, it kind of like it opens the album in a bit of a way, like how like, is this it? The Strokes opens. It's just like this kind of like a bit, I don't know, like a bit of a gloomy way, mid-tempo kind of gloomy way to kind of open the record. I think the reason why that album connected was because it was just like honest about like, yeah, you might be kind of like a bit of a hip person, everyone in the nightclub, and you're at all the like free industry events where the bar's free and you get a free pair of trainers and all that stuff. But basically, like, your life is still a myth. Do you know what I mean? It's like, it's not what you put on Instagram. You'd put the parties, you'd be like, yeah, look at me, and just like kind of sell the thing. But just like, yeah, like how damp your flat is. Like anyone's flat in East you go to, yeah, their flat's damp, there's no one's got enough room. You're paying through the nose for like a box room in some damp. That's the reality that everyone's going through. But it's just like everyone's in the party and they're wearing Balenciaga. And do you know what I mean? I'm just trying to, I just feel like London's one of those places. It's kind of like, I was just trying to get that across. I kind of feel like there was like a piece missing where no one had kind of like communicated that. Like there was a lyric on that same song, Lifestyle of the Broken, the Free Clothes. I just wanted to kind of talk about that lifestyle. I mean, I was really living that lifestyle. I'd be like hanging out somewhere and I'd take a photo and it'd be like Stormzy's there, or do you know what I mean? Whoever's there in the picture. And then I'm going home and like, my bathroom's like in pieces, or do you know what I mean?
How do you match those two things? How do you reconcile? No matter who you are, you go to a party like that and you're next to Stormzy, you're going to feel quite cool. You're going to go back with your new shoes, and you got a shirt that's going to, it's still got the creases from being wrapped up in its paper.
Yeah.
Like how do you reconcile that with getting to work on your own music, the next day, waking up and getting into that zone?
Well, I always had the instinct to do it. I feel like there's another project, and there's a few songs online, and I think we're going to actually, we've got an album that we haven't released, but there's a project I worked on called Half Brother. It's with my friend Patrick, and through that whole time when I was just like in the clubs heavy, and I was just like active in London, I was just going to the studio every day and just working with my guy on music. It was just like instinctive, like that's what, you know, I kind of like, that's what I wanted to do. You know, I think it was such an important process for me to kind of like work that out, that all that kind of like fun, kind of like hype stuff is great, but like I was always just writing songs and I wanted to comment on what was going on, you know.
People knew you for this one thing, to be the hype person, to being the DJ, where, you know, you're also an artist and you see yourself more as an artist. Was that like a hard screen to get through?
It's funny because I think it was like a process that I didn't know I was going through. That was the A&R process. It was like, you realize that the only thing that works is just being yourself. I think the beauty was like, I always had some kind of thing happening, but no one really gave a shit that much. I was just kind of like, you know, I used to live in Manchester, you know, but I was doing music from way before, you know, but I lived in Manchester for a bit. I was running club nights. I moved back to London. I'm doing that. And it's like, you know, I was kind of like more of a facilitator of like, you know, good times or, you know, or moments or, and it was like, so it's kind of, in a way, it was like a great incubator, because I wouldn't say I was like growing up in public. It wasn't like people were paying that much attention, you know, so it was kind of like it allowed me to work things out and slowly kind of unravel, do you know what I mean, into like a butterfly.
I guess that gives you time to get smart, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Working as a DJ, putting on shows, you got to see how that works. So as an artist, you're not necessarily going in blind, being like, okay, oh, you work with me? Okay, I'm just going to hand you this work and hope you do a good job with it.
Oh, yeah. You saw so much. I mean, I think one of the things as a promoter, like, especially when I was like running parties in Manchester and I was booking a lot of stuff, is like you saw, you know, like, I booked Ed Sheeran for 50 quid once, like, for like it was like an acoustic thing that I was. It was like I had a club night, but I had like acoustic acts on early. It was for like, do you remember a festival called In the City Festival? So like, yeah, I did like a showcase for them, and it was like live, like kind of like live acoustic first, and then DJs afterwards. And I've booked him for like 50 quid, 100 quid or whatever, and seen where he went. But then I've booked someone for a club night. Obviously I won't name names, but you know, someone who's got like the hot tune that year.
It's got to be Tiny Temper.
Nah, not Tiny, not Tiny, man. Like, full respect. Tiny was, I mean, I don't know him, but he always came across as very professional. But I feel like, you know, someone with the hot tune in the clubs, and they turn up to your club and they're like super late. They're like 2 hours late, wearing sunglasses, like they're like being rude to everyone. But then you see, like, in a couple of years when their buzz has gone and their behavior's totally shifted. So I kind of could see that, like, I don't know, I think that taught me a lot, you know, like seeing how like a moment of success is like not to let it engulf you, and just to kind of like keep your head on the kind of like what's actually happening, as opposed to like the moment that you're in. I've had days, you know, you look back at your like Spotify, you know, your Spotify for artists, and you're like, oh, there's a big spike there. Okay, yeah, I remember that happened on that day. But for the most part, and I think that's what's been really good about what I'm doing, is that I haven't had that kind of like, I've more seen it happen, you know, when I was more like booking stuff. But like for me, it's been very kind of like, you know, that first album, Murkage Dave, changed my life. I just wanted to make an album and play See Bright Arms, you know, because that was all I wanted to do. Like, because my mate Oscar, World Peace, he had done that, and I was the DJ for that show, and I was DJing. I was like, man, I'd love to do this. Just like have a room full of people that were there because of the music that you made, not that you were going to play the hits, or you were going to, you know, or there was some free stuff to give away. It was like, no, they're, you know, the emotional attachment is there. And so that's all that I wanted to do. But then when that album came out, that quickly, that happened within like the space of, as soon as the album came out, that happened. And so I was like, oh shit, like, and people were like, where's the vinyl? When you come into my city, all this stuff. And then I was like, oh.
Did you have a viral moment, or did you have any kind of like moments at festivals?
I think that's still coming. I think that like I think that's probably still on the way. I mean, like, who knows what's going to happen this time that I drop, the city needs a hero. Who knows, man? Who knows what's coming? Like, I can't say. I mean, it's kind of weird. I mean, I'll probably listen back to this and go, mate, why didn't you just say that thing? But I honestly can't think of. There's been days where I've dropped a song, I've dropped a video, and then like certain artists have like reshared it, or certain, or it's clicked. But sometimes, okay, like, so for instance, like there's a song I have called Car Bomb, yeah, and that's not like my biggest song, but when I released that song, that was probably like more important to me than any other big splash that I've made, because that was the day when people started taking me seriously as an artist. Do you know what I mean? And I learned that all I had to do was be honest, and it was going to be fine. And so like, and I remember like loads of people sharing it, going, "Oh my God, look at what Dave's done," and it was like almost like a bit of a surprise. And then like it just went on to be like one of those songs that like like Pharrell played it a lot. Like, so like Young Fathers, they were like, they love that record. I think it's that song has connected me with like a lot of like artists that I love, like Evidence, as a rapper from LA. A lot of the time when like it's like an artist that like I really love and they reach out, it's been that song that people have kind of like, if someone's played them that song. And so as much as it's not my biggest song and it wasn't my biggest viral moment, I think it was probably my most important turning point, I think.
The City Needs a Hero. Is there a track like that? Is there a Car Bomb on there?
Since Car Bomb, I've kind of just had that attitude with every song. It's just like, how do you feel? And say how you feel about whatever subject it is. So I think that like almost like after Car Bomb, every song I've written is a Car Bomb. They impact to different degrees. It's hard to say. I think, and I'm sure, as a musician yourself, you know that like your listeners are always going to surprise you. So like for me, my most streamed song week on week, without doubt, like without fail, for like the last however long, is Murkage Dave Changed My Life. And that song, obviously it's like that, it's the title track of the album, but it's like, it was never a single, it didn't have a video, I never spent a penny on that song itself. It's never been in any editorial playlists on streaming site, on DSPs or whatever. It's like, it's literally just, that's the song of mine that people listen to the most. And also like, it's like the one song that I like, it's like so personal. It didn't even have any consideration of, I didn't really consider, how am I communicating this to make it more general or anything like that. It was just more like, okay, I just wanted to, at that point, I was like, look, I just want to know that I've made an album. If I never get to do this again, I know that I made an album. And so that song, I had to just make it as real as possible so that like, I knew that I could be proud of it. Whatever I did afterwards, I could just be proud. And it's just funny how that song, more than any song that I'll be like, let's do a video for that one, or let's get, you're always putting your little strategies together, but that song is the one that's done the business. So I don't know. Who knows, man?
Awful Things with Caroline Polachek is fucking sick.
Thank you, man. She got stuck in London. She sometimes is in London, but she got stuck in London during the pandemic. And that was actually the last show that I went to before lockdown, was Caroline Polachek. She played at Heaven, and that's where I met her. So we kind of like had connected online. She had followed me on Twitter, and I was just confused. I was just like, well, how do you know me? Like, do you know what I mean? And she was like, oh, I learnt to drive to your album. I play your album all the time in the car. I was like, raw.
That's great.
Yeah. Do you know what I mean? And this is what,
mate. Everyone knows that album they first played when they got in the one. Learning to drive. I remember my first record putting in. I remember that first CD getting. In
what
the
was
car
it?
if I drive
What did
in.
you have?
The Replacements. Tim.
Oh, okay. No, I don't know them, but yeah, sick.
Great band.
Yeah.
But it's that moment, because you don't get many moments in life where you remember it so vividly, being in fucking charge of the fucking car for the first time, alone, being like, fuck. And all your mates being like, pick me up. You're like, yeah, if I can go 10 meters.
I'm taking it in because I can't drive, so I've got that to look forward to still. I've got to learn. Yeah, I got to learn. But I was kind of blown away by that. And then we spoke a bit, and then she was like, "Oh, I'm gonna be I'm having this show, like come down." So like we went down and said hello and stuff. But then and then lockdown hit. Like I think like within like the next week, she got stuck in London. But it's funny because it's not like we actually saw. The only time I saw her at like a Black Lives Matter march. But apart from that, I didn't actually see her in real life. But we just worked remotely on that song across lockdown. I mean, I always worked a lot of jobs. From like my first job when I was like 14 was Woolworths, Leytonstone Woolworths, £3.24 an hour. Like that was where I started, and then it was like JD Sports, and then when I moved to Manchester, I was like JD again, and then I worked at USC. I did like Zara, like all the kind of like retail stuff, and then I remember like I had Ticketmaster, but by that point I had started my club night, and I was telling everyone about that, and I don't know, I just was like on that wave, and I got fired from that job because I was just like not taking it seriously. But like I would say that really what happened was I always wanted to do music. That was it. It was always music through that whole time, from when I was like literally from primary school. It was music. But then what happened was I had like I had like a few bands and stuff that were kind of like funk bands, but like kind of a bit, I don't know, I'm trying to describe it without making it sound like Maroon 5, but do you know what I'm saying? But there was a song that I had recorded when I was doing that stuff. It was like a kind of soul record, and it got remixed by an outfit called Sunship. They were like a big garage outfit. They did a lot of the big Craig Davey remixes, and they did like a lot of like Mystique stuff and stuff like that. But they were like really embedded. They'd done a lot of big garage, like kind of like white labels and stuff, and they had remixed that song, and DJ EZ had put it on Pure Garage, rewind back to the old school. And that was like MySpace era, but that was a viral moment for my family, because it was like the first time all my cousins got that CD for Christmas, and my name, it just when I was going as David Lewis, but it was just like my name was on the CD, and I thought that I was going to become like the new Craig David off that. So I was just like, let's go. And I started, what I wanted to do was start something that would be a platform for me and my friends to push our music. And that's when I started. At first, the night was called Monday Murkage, because it was just, I thought it would be funny. This is the alliteration of it was just funny to me. And that's kind of mad how that's ended up being my name, because it was totally not really the plan, bro. But like, actually at one point I seriously considered changing my name, because I was just like, doesn't really make sense. But I quite like the fact that my name and the music kind of like, there's this kind of like, they rub up against each other a bit. I would say that what happened was I fell into promoting. I was always dabbling with it because it was like a way to make quick money when I was at uni. I got kicked out of uni. I was like working as like a sub promoter on R&B nights and stuff. And I could feel that there was like a cult thing happening around this club night. But I ended up kind of getting sucked a bit too deep into the vortex, of so does that answer your question? I can't remember if it does.
Yeah, it does. I asked you about work, and you just gave some excellent stories about work. And I've, everyone who's worked at pubs or nightlife knows there that it's sort of a different language, isn't it? Just sort of carries on,
Yeah.
And is that what you're talking about? Was there an element of that?
I think it was just like, I think at that point I didn't understand that there was a distinction between like, for me it's just like being creative, and I was starting to get like some kind of like, like nice feedback from like ideas I was having, so, but it was just like, I think that the difference between a club night and a song is like, people are just going to a club night to have a good time, and that's it, and like, even like, I ended up having like this club night, the Murkage Club ended up being like a Manchester kind of like, if you would call it a club institution for like a few years. It was like a thing, but really it's only for those people that went at that time that remember it and celebrate it. Whereas like a song is different. It's like, it finds new audiences. It means different things to different people. Like, you go and listen to like Marvin Gaye now, and it's like, or like Stevie Wonder, like he's Mr. Know-It-All. Yeah, that's about Nixon, but that could be about Trump, or do you know what I mean? Or Boris, or do you know what I mean? It's like, that's and that's what I was missing. I think at the time I didn't realize that I was kind of, I guess it was an easier thing to get into, and like you make it work because you were making it work in your city, you were making it work locally. But all I ever wanted to do really was music, and I kind of got like, I just ended up kind of funneling into like that world. And so like sometimes I feel like, like what would have happened had I just kind of stuck with like the songs. But then to be honest, I feel like I'm the only kind of the only reason, like that, not the only reason, but what made my songwriting interesting was all that madness that was happening, and then that goes into the songwriting,
Dave, thanks so much for being up for it.
Giles, man, thank you, man. I feel like you've helped me work out some shit, man. Like I'm going to listen back to this and be like, raw.
So there was Murkage Dave on 101 Part-Time Jobs. His new album, The City Needs a Hero, which has got so many gems on it, is out this Friday. Looking forward to getting my copy. Cheers for listening. See you next week. Here's Cocksparrow.
I've been working all day for me mate on the side, running around like a blue ass fly. I've been working all day for me mate. Every bleeding minute I've been on the go, up and down the ladder like a fiddler's elbow. I've been working all day for me mate.
This is a Mighty Moon Media podcast.